Beloved, of the many problems confronting society, none is more disturbing than the scourge of pedophilia, gender-based violence, femicide, and rape. Our secular understanding of the problem leads us to ascribe this to toxic masculinity and other social factors. The phenomenon of toxic masculinity can be said to arise from the socialization of boys in patriarchal societies and is in reference to, one, the traditional stereotypes of men as socially dominant, to the normalization of violence, such as in the saying, and I quote, "boys will be boys," end quote, about bullying and aggression, and three, the tolerance of misogyny, which promotes violence, including sexual assault and domestic violence. It stems from the way in which boys are socialized to treat girls as sex objects and not as fully human, or where inadequate men who are delusional, selfish, and narcissistic are predatory in their pursuit of raping children and physically assaulting women. This problem is the consequence of both sinful and criminal behavior, and there's simply no justification, cultural or moral, for it. It is a problem of cowards and weak men, as we say in Afrikaans, lafhartige swakkelinge, who are driven by perverted lusts, men who do not follow the precepts of the Most High and Sovereign God. A few weeks ago, I touched on the question of moral values, and I alluded to the French philosopher Michel Foucault's defending of pedophilia, i.e. the rape of children. And this is precisely the kind of nonsense which arises when men reject God and place themselves on par with God. Foucault, an atheist and child rapist, is celebrated, yet today he is 6 foot under, and people in their vain pursuits follow such a fool as a role model. Many regard him as a giant among men, despite the fact that Foucault and others sought to develop an intellectual justification for pedophilia, and therefore contributed massively to the problem. Whilst there are many such examples, I cite Foucault because I have a particular disdain for him and others like him, who reject my God and lead others astray through the sin of vanity and pride and their own perverted ideas, derived from subjective moral values. What we need to appreciate is that when we reject God, we reject any access to objective moral values, which the objective lawgiver, God, endows us with. When this happens, we enter into the realm of subjective moral values, which is absurd, since under this regime, each one of us is free to decide what is right and what is wrong, sans any objective reference point. Its logical consequence is a world where anything goes, and the moral decrepitude which leads to the scourge of pedophilia, gender-based violence, femicide, and rape takes hold. It is important to understand that God is a God of discipline and not ill discipline. If we follow his precepts, we will experience his fullness, love, grace, and honor. In Leviticus 18:15, he says, and I quote, "If you obey my decrees and my regulations, you will find life through them," end quote. And in Micah 6:8, he says, and I quote, "People, the Lord has told you what is good, what he requires of you, to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God," end quote. We pray for all those who are suffering under the yoke of this scourge and ask God to keep and protect all who call upon his name for help. And may we all do whatever it takes to create an awareness of this problem and have a zero tolerance towards men who display the characteristics of misogyny and tendencies to justify the abuse of women. We all need to stand up and hold them to account. I encourage you to stay blessed and have a blessed week. Shavua Tov.